was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. This is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 36. It held a special meaning then when a group of men and women left their jobs and what had been their lives up to that point to follow Christ as he sought to transform the world. These were hard and anxious times, and even then it was clear that the hunger and thirst were not just physical, and that the welcome was not merely to village households. There was always a much deeper meaning to everything that Christ said, and a much greater truth that he was here on earth to reveal. This is the true meaning of what is termed Christian charity, and it is based on the golden rule that it is at the foundation of all religions. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It is echoed in the commandments and also holds true for those who are not strangers. I am definitely not a stranger to most of you, and certainly not to St. Augustine, where you have chosen to celebrate your 85th anniversary and to meet to chart the future of your organization and your church. I have grown up in this religion, and you have welcomed me and taken me among you. You have exalted me by asking me to be part of your observance and celebration. In turn, let me wish you well, even though many of you are not strangers to me. We are all here in God's name to do his work and to carry on his ministry. The Women's Conference has played a major part in the life of our church, and in these times, that seem to be the best of times and sometimes the worst of times. You have an even greater role to play in the future. Your choosing the theme, I was a stranger and you welcomed me, is especially significant when we consider the development of the Presbyterian Church in Trinidad and Tobago. There were these families, almost exclusively of Indian origin, among whom strangers from Canada came to spread a gospel that was entirely different from what they had grown up with, in a language that was still largely unfamiliar to many of them. The good people of Irie Village and of Trinidad as a whole did not throw them out or reject them. Consistent with their upbringing, their code of hospitality, and their own philosophy of life, they welcomed these foreigners and strangers with open arms and hearts. This is how the Women's Foreign Missionary Society, the WFMS, from the Presbyterian Church in Canada, came to play an integral part of the development of women in our Presbyterian Church here in Trinidad and Tobago. Our people gave these strangers not just a hearing, but a place in their lives and the lives of their children and their children's children. This behavior is part of a culture that is common to ancient India as it is to Africa, the two areas from which most of our ancestors came. Even now, anyone who comes into my mother's home and the homes of many of us here today must drink something when they arrive and cannot leave without eating something. This is our culture, and it is one that characterizes us even in the midst of hardship. Irie Village, just outside of Princestown, was the crystallization of the connection between the WFMS and the women of Trinidad and Tobago. It was the first of many. In 1912, 101 years ago, the Irie Home for Girls was established. Isn't that incredible? Who would have thought that anyone would start something so significant, a movement so far-reaching in what was really the country, the cane and agricultural area, instead of Port of Spain or even San Fernando? In many ways, this symbolized the growth of Presbyterianism in this country. It was based on the twin pillars of faith and education, and it found fertile soil in the country areas among our women. This is not surprising. I've always said that if you educate a man, with all due respect to the gentlemen in our midst, if you educate a man, you only educate one person. When you educate a woman, you reach beyond the individual. You educate a family, a village, a community, and a nation. The United Nations agencies all know that the key to progress in the underdeveloped world is education of our women. Do you realize that the WFMS found that out over 100 years ago and applied the lesson to other institutions? Naparima Girls High School was also founded in 1912, and I was pleased to be part of the celebration of its centenary. It is a formidable institution with a history of service that is incomparable. The Archibald Vocational Institute was founded in 1931, 3 years after the first annual Presbyterian Women's Conference and the St. Augustine Girls High School, SAGS, the venue of today's momentous conference in 1953. I think it is fitting that we are here for this year's ceremony. This is the Diamond Jubilee year of this amazing school for girls. Its contribution to this community and country is incredible. Let's give them a round of applause. My own daughter attended St. Augustine Girls High School for the first 5 years of her life before moving on to Naparima Girls High School to do her CAPE studies. St. Augustine Girls High School contribution to this community and country is incredible. It has added so much value to public life, education, and the quality of life of so many people. Like Naparima Girls, it towers over the educational landscape, turning out generations of female leaders. Of course, we must not forget all our elementary schools. For example, the Cura Presbyterian School right here in this community. And in my own community in San Fernando, the Susamachar Church is on the same compound with a school named after Reverend Dr. Kenneth Grant, who started secondary level tuition for his son George and some of the other kids from the mission. This is the Grant Memorial School, but it is a memorial not just to Dr. Grant, but for those Canadians led by Reverend Morton and his wife, who took over the mission at Irie High School and whose commitment to the cause of Christianity opened the eyes, hearts, minds, and souls of so many of us over the past 100 years. We have to look at the early encounters of these two worlds, the Presbyterian Church of Canada and the mainly Indian laborers of Irie Village as a two-way street. It is true that they were strangers to us and we welcomed them, but we were also strangers to them, and they joined to help make our lives better. The Presbyterian religion in those days was very much like its founder, John Knox. It was not very tolerant, and it was more Old Testament style than New Testament. I think that our people, our women, especially helped to soften the approach of the Presbyterian Church, and we affected the Presbyterian religion just as much as it impacted on us. There were hymns in Hindi, there are bhajans celebrating God. They became part of the liturgy of this church. Even then, it was never, and it is not an unequal relationship like colonialism was. It was never part of the colonization of Trinidad and Tobago. The relationship between the Canadians and the people of Trinidad and Tobago was and continues to be a partnership in progress, a partnership in prosperity, both material and spiritual, and a partnership for peace, harmony, and family values. It was founded on mutual trust and respect. It was founded on the mutual brotherhood and sisterhood of the children of God. Today, 15 years from the centenary of the Presbyterian Women's Conference And after 85 years of guiding the church safely through economic and political changes, where do we go from here? What are our next steps? And what are our plans for the future of our conference and our church? Trinidad and Tobago is changing rapidly. The pressure on women to contribute to the household is even greater today than it was in the days of the women of our Bible. While we are the ones that still keep our families together, the burden is even greater. Most of you here today work. You have to be breadwinners as well as bread makers. You are the rock on which not only this church, but the stability of our religion and our country depends on, which it is founded. Having said that, as women in this church, we still play the role of women in the Bible, many of whom were charged with the responsibility for building great leaders. The perfect example being Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, who built one of the best leaders in the world today. Young women today, however, are not like the young women of our generation or the ones in Irie Village who were the first converts to Christianity. They have to make very tough decisions about many things at a very early age. These are what we term heavy subjects, not the least of which are sex, drugs, religion, and education. Our generation did not have to make these choices until much later. We had time to learn and time to grow. Our socialization was less rapid, and within the context of the extended family, we had warmth, safety, security, and discipline. Today, the internet, Facebook, television, the Twitter, the cell phone, this cell phone generation have no such safety net, no such comfort zone or nurturing environment. The technology itself is a two-edged sword. It is like the atom in a way. It can destroy lives, but it has enormous potential and capacity for good. It can make life much, much better for this generation and generations to come. However, the internet platform has to be supported by pillars of fairness, transparency, equity, honesty, trust, and trustworthiness. Do you realize today we are becoming more and more strangers to the truth? In the past, when we welcomed strangers into our homes and into our lives, we were accustomed to assuming first trust and trustworthiness until I can prove that I cannot trust you. Today, do you realize that when we welcome strangers into our homes and our lives, we start with the assumption of mistrust until I can prove that I can trust you? Isn't that a telling tale of our society? This is why it is incumbent on organizations such as this to ensure that these values are instilled and embedded in our children. It is incumbent on our schools and on our homes to continue to instill and embed in our children. We as women, as parents, as aunts, as mothers, as grandmothers, and makers of leaders, we do our best, but that is sometimes not enough to keep our children, our daughters especially, along the straight and narrow path. It is not easy to walk that straight and narrow path. It is about making sure we have the courage to do so. Today, my friends, technology is a tool, as useful and as dangerous as a knife in the hands of a child or a box of matches. We need to work with our children. We need to work with them to ensure that they know the dangers and they choose the positive instead of the negative. And this is why, I stand here and I have no qualms of repeating my public statement that using the net by these bloggers for propaganda to destroy the lives of people, we cannot continue because we are not interested in the truth. And that is because the value system in our society has broken down. This challenge of change and the challenge to change is what faces you for the next 15 years and beyond. I think you need to reevaluate the role of your conference and of women in our church, and what we could do for our daughters, our children as a whole, and how we can continue to remain credible and current. This is not an easy task, but in unity there is strength. Look at you here today. Look at strength you have displayed. Look at unity you have displayed. You need to give yourselves a round of applause for the unity you have displayed. I believe that our children, our religion, our church, the tolerance for which it is best known, the mix of economic and social activities that characterizes and celebrates our comradeship are the keys to the future of our church. I know how much your president, Mrs. Ramlochan, the members of your board, and the many other women's groups that are represented here today from so many different communities across the country are concerned about the future of the women's movement in the church and the church itself. You have done a lot. You have worked hard, but your most important contributions are yet to come. In San Fernando, as the Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, we are trying to restore the sense of community and pride in our city. I believe that the reason the Presbyterian Church became so firmly established there is because San Fernando is the most cosmopolitan and the most tolerant city in the country. Every race and religion finds an equal place. In fact, it is on the grounds of our Susamachar Church in San Fernando that we have our headquarters. Let me tell you, I always believe that communities in San Fernando were built by the women of the Susamachar Presbyterian Church. Similarly, many of you here today, and many of whom have gone before us, built the many communities in close proximity to your churches. Today, we need to return to rebuilding strong and cohesive communities. And you have an important role to play in that. With strong and cohesive communities, we can build strong and cohesive neighborhoods. And with strong and cohesive neighborhoods, we can build a strong, cohesive, and united nation. My Ministry of Public Administration is facilitating the transformation of our national public service. It was part of the British Civil Service, but when our country became independent in 1962, it became the National Public Service. Last year, it was 50 years old. Yet while celebrating those 50 years of Golden Jubilee, we were putting in place a plan for the next 10 years. By the time the Diamond Anniversary comes around, we want to see a 21st century public service that is citizen-centric. We want to ensure that any citizen, regardless of creed, race, geography, can access the best possible service in the shortest time, at the highest quality, and at the lowest cost. Our citizens are demanding value for money. They see better service as a right and our responsibility. However, while we modernize the public service, it must be steeped in the core values of the public service. As we move to delegate authority and empower our public officers to make decisions in the public interest, we must ensure that every public servant who now has the power to make that decision adheres to the core values at all times. It is the same bedrock on which we build our children's future and our nation's future. It is the same core values, family values, that I referred to earlier, of fairness, transparency, equity, honesty, trust, and trustworthiness. To this I must add integrity. Integrity in public life and in the public service must go hand in hand. As a product of the Presbyterian primary education system and the Presbyterian Church, integrity is my personal yardstick and beacon. It is what I stand for and will always stand for. It is what I hope my children will be known for when they face their own challenges. I have learned that while it is important for people to like you, it is even more important that they respect you. I believe that if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. as a politician, as a professional, and as a minister of government and parliamentary representative, as a mother, a wife, and a woman, I try to keep to those same core values. I do not believe that I should do as a politician what I will not do as a mother. I have to walk the same walk and walk the same talk. I owe this, my friends, to my strong upbringing in the Presbyterian Church, and I want the same for my children. This is why faith-based organizations such as yours has an important role to play. Every organization, every movement, every group is facing the same test of its relevance and its resolve. We cannot talk about good governance in our country if we do not have the family values by which we all stand. We live in trying times where our long-held and deep-rooted values are vanishing. It is not every stranger who is now welcomed into our communities or in our homes, as there are many who will try to enter, as you know, with felonious intent. There are an increasing number of people who do not have food to give or water to share. There are social causes at the root of many of our problems, of drugs, crime, and prostitution. We cannot be complacent or comfortable in the midst of the breakdown in values and the escalation of crime. We have to become more active and in and outside of the church. We have to look ahead and be proactive. We have to be advocates for a better Trinidad and Tobago and dedicate ourselves anew to our children's future. We have to preserve and protect our environment and our family values. It is truly said that a woman's work is never done. If our work is done, then our nation will be done as well. I urge you to spend a little time in this conference and even devote the next one to a long, hard look at your future. You are an extremely important group that can help us realize a better future for our church, our families, and most important, for our nation, our beloved nation, Trinidad and Tobago. You have demonstrated over 85 years your grasp of the fundamentals of Christianity, love of family, love for neighbors and community, love for country, and most of all, love for life. You have been a vibrant and active part of our church and its mission. We need you. This nation needs you. As I end, I want to remind you of your conference hymn. Again, like the team, I was a stranger and you welcome me. It is appropriate and has far-reaching consequences for how we approach the future. It says, and you can all recite with me, if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody how they are traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. As our country travels through time to its goal of sustainable development, let us commit ourselves to this message. Ladies, if I can show somebody how they are traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. I pray that God will continue to bless each and every one of you, and that God will continue to bless this great organization with strength, courage, and wisdom to continue to work ahead of you as you go through the next 15 years and approach the centenary of your life. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and may God bless you.